Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zoned Radio, and you're listening to Dodgers Baseball, a tale of two cities, from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter Trunk, and my very special guest tonight is an iconic member of the Dodger family, a key component to the historically powerful and dominant Dodger teams of the 1950s. Pitching for the club from 1948 to 1959, he won 122 games, plus 2 more in the World Series. His career included 2 no-hitters and a 1-hitter. He was an all-star and was named one of the greatest 40 Dodgers in history in 2011. Known by baseball fans around the world as Oisk, number 17, Carl Erskine. How are you today, Carl?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm having a great morning here in Indiana. The sun is up. It's a beautiful morning in the spring, and I'm delighted to talk to you, Peter, about some of the great things in my life was my years in Brooklyn.
Wow. Yes, they were great years for you. Maybe you could tell us where you lived in Brooklyn and who your neighbors were, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, Betty and I were a young couple with one small child, and I was called to the Dodgers. We got to Brooklyn. In those years, we were all on one-year contracts, and I had to find an apartment. I did. Some folks by the last name of Pepperman allowed us to rent a basement apartment in Brooklyn. I couldn't tell you now even what part of the city it was in because we only lived there, I think, maybe two seasons. And then I found another place where Duke Snyder and Pee Wee had located in Bay Ridge. So we found a spot there. A lady leased us a house. Her name was Mrs. Grace Coughlin, and she had a sister in Saratoga, and she would go to visit her sister anytime we needed to move in to the house, a row house on Lafayette Walk in Bay Ridge. And then when the season was over, if we got extended time to play in the World Series, Mrs. Coughlin said, "Oh, that's fine. Just stay as long as you need to." So a lot of times leases would be a certain date, and you'd have to get out. But we had a great setup in Bay Ridge with Mrs. Coughlin. And then we carpooled from Bay Ridge with Pee Wee, Duke Snyder, Rube Walker. We would drive to Ebbets Field, alternating drivers. And so it was a neat deal. It was set up just wonderful for us in Brooklyn. And those were the days when I mentioned one-year contracts. We wouldn't dare buy a house where we were playing because you could be sold or traded any time. And but we came back 1 year at a time, and I played 10 seasons in Brooklyn. Stayed at Mrs. Coughlin's, I think, 8 of the 10 years.
Wow, that's a great story. Did your children, were they involved in Little League, for instance, in Brooklyn while you were there?
Well, actually, I had 2 little boys. Danny was the oldest. He was around probably 7 years old at our first few years there. And then Gary, 2 years younger. And they actually went to school some in Brooklyn. It was always a problem for players who had families when school started. Would they go back to their hometown schools or try to locate wherever they're playing? But my kids did go to school a little bit in Brooklyn. And, my oldest son, Danny, went out for the Little League team in Brooklyn. He was only 7 years old. And he was very capable when he was a kid, though. He matured fast. But he came home with a uniform. And I thought, oh, that's too bad. Now, Danny's only 7. Surely so I sat him to see the coach, and I said, gee, I hope you didn't just give Danny a uniform because his dad plays for the Dodgers. He said, don't kid yourself. No, he said, we had tryouts. Why, your little Danny, he catches the ball better than anybody we got. He's going to be my center fielder. Well, that was a pretty amazing thing because I thought he just gave Danny a uniform because he happened to be the kid of the Dodgers. Well, then when a couple of years passed and they announced the Dodgers were leaving Brooklyn, everybody you talked to on the street were just moaning, oh, my gosh, we're going to lose our team. We don't want to lose you guys. Everybody was just down in the dumps because the team was going to move. So I ran into a coach one day, Danny's coach, and he started the same kind of conversation. Oh, you guys are leaving. Man, I can't believe it. And I thought he was talking mostly because he's going to lose the Dodger team. He said, I'm going to lose the best center fielder in the league. Danny's going to move away. I can't handle that.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
We had a great time in Brooklyn. Yeah, well, we moved in, and the neighbors were just like hometown. We got to know the barber in the neighborhood, the butcher, the deli guy, and I remember knowing so many people up and down the streets, and then we'd come back each year and kind of renew friendships because we'd go away at the end of the season in October and come back in the spring, and it was kind of like a whole coming back home again. When you come back to the neighborhood, everybody's coming to see you. And our neighborhood we had 2 or 3 babysitters in the neighborhood. We still keep in touch with a few of our neighbors that some of the girls, the teenagers then, set for our boys. And so we had a lot of ties with Brooklyn. Cosmo was our barber shop, and Cosmo was a mustachioed Italian guy that cut the hair for my kids. And Abe Myerson had a deli down the street. Abe wouldn't let us buy any groceries, and we said, Abe, that's not fair. We got to pay for a No, you guys shouldn't pay for anything. And so it was just, I'd pitch a good ball game. I'd come home. The kids would have balloons in the trees and have a street party. And so we had a lot of great times in Brooklyn.
That sounds like it was really fantastic. In those days, Carl, I believe your spring training was at Dodgertown, and Dodgertown in Vero Beach, Florida, was very interesting, I understand, back then, living in barracks, the old barracks for the soldiers. Can you tell us a little bit about...
Yeah, after the war, there were a lot of facilities around the country that were going to be abandoned because during the wartime they needed lots of spots. But there was a naval air station in Vero Beach, Florida, which had a small airport there and a factory that made Piper Cub airplanes. But there was a naval air station, had 2 big barracks and a mess hall, and Mr. Rickey leased that for $1 a year in 1948 and turned it into a spring training camp. Well, I attended the camp my second year in baseball. My second spring training was at Vero Beach at what became Dodgertown. But this was very primitive. This place had been shut up for 2 years, and it was a wooden barracks. It had a lot of openings in the doorways and the cracks in the floor, and there were bugs and every kind of varmint you could think of, lizards, whatever. And this place was very primitive, and it had been carved out of an area, and they had some diamonds, a sliding pitch, pitching mounds, but the perimeter was still very, very much jungle. And you wouldn't dare stick your hand in to pick a ball up that was in the bushes. You just leave it. And there was a stream that went through there, kind of a ditch. There were some alligators in there. Anyway, it was a very primitive place. The roads weren't paved, and that's how we started Dodgertown. But over time, and then the Dodgers had a huge system. They had 790 ball players under contract. They weren't all there at the same time, but over spring training, there would be almost 800 ball players training at this camp. And then as time passed, many years passed, the old barracks were torn down, and a villa was built with winding streets, and it was more like a large motel area with winding streets named after the players, and a diamond, a stadium built, held about 6,000 people, I guess, for spring training games. And it developed into a beautiful training site. and fans could come and walk around the grounds and be real close to the players, and it got to be very historic. In fact, it now has a famous name. In 2008, the ownership of the Dodgers moved spring training to Arizona, and they wanted to keep the name Dodger Town with the team in Arizona. But Peter O'Malley, former owner of the Dodgers, he was able to influence enough to get it named a historic site in Florida and named historic Dodger Town. So it still exists, and it's a place for minor league baseball, for college tournaments in the spring, and even a Korean team comes over and trains there every year, which they have for years. So
wow.
Dodger Town is still open and alive and well.
Wow. That's a great story. When you came up I believe you came up in 1948,
right.
in July. You actually went 6-3 as a rookie. The starting four for the Dodgers back then in '48 was Rex Barney, Ralph Branca, Joe Hatton, and Preacher Rowe. And then in '49, Newcomb came in there. But you were 6-3 as a rookie and 8-1 your second year. Gosh, when you broke in, your first 18 decisions, you were 14-4. Was that when your arm was very healthy?
No, I'll tell you what happened there. Well, let me jump in just ahead of that a little bit. When I went to Brooklyn in '48, I came up from the minor leagues, Fort Worth, Texas, and I didn't have any money, and I couldn't stay in a fine hotel. So I asked somebody. I'd been a member of the YMCA in my hometown in Anderson, Indiana. So I asked somebody, does Brooklyn have a YMCA? They said, oh, yeah, the biggest Y in the world is the Hanson Place YMCA. Well, I said, where's that at? And they said, well, you get there by subway, and here's how to go. So I went down to Hanson Place YMCA, and I got a room. And I don't remember what I paid for it, but it was pretty cheap. And it was a second-floor room, and I had a cot and a little desk. And then down the hall was the telephone and the showers, restrooms. And so I stayed there. Well, I won my first game, then second game, and I started out, I was 5-0 living at the YMCA in Brooklyn. And then but the arm trouble started during that first stretch of my win. I won 2 games in relief, and then I got a start against the Cubs in Brooklyn at Ebbets Field, and it was raining most of the day. It drizzled most of the day. And I had pitched a minor league season in '47, a whole winter season in Cuba in '47, '48. Then I came back to spring training, went through all the throwing in spring training, went to Fort Worth, Texas, and I won 15 games by mid-July. And I pitched probably 600 innings consecutively when I finally got called to Brooklyn. Won 2 games in relief, and then the game I was pitching against the Cubs, my first start in drizzling rain, I pulled a muscle in my shoulder in the 7th inning. I remembered the pitch I threw a fastball to Bill Nicholson, struck him out with a high fastball, but I felt a sharp pain, stabbing pain in my right shoulder. And what had happened, we found out later, I'd actually pulled a muscle pitching. But I finished the game and beat the Cubs. Now I'm 3-0, and then I beat the Phillies the next time out 2-1, and then I pitched the next 4 days, again another complete game. I beat the Phillies in Philly 8-1. So I was 5-0, but I did a lot of damage to my shoulder pitching in those games after I hurt it. I didn't want to say anything, a rookie. I didn't want to say anything about my arm being bad, or it sent me back to the minors. So I kept pitching with it, and I ended up with 6-3. But that gave me huge trouble in the next spring and the spring after that, and I had some real struggles each spring. We didn't have any off-season therapy or routine to stay in shape. None of those things. We didn't have any kind of training venue of any kind. So we just on your own. So I'd go back to spring training and really have a struggle every year because after laying off for 4 months, my arm would be in bad shape. So I had to fight through all that. But fortunately, I learned to pitch around that injury a little bit, and I went on to pitch 12 seasons in the big leagues, and had some of the best games after that. Yeah.
I'll say you learned how to pitch around it. I want to talk about something a little bit different next. I want to talk. You hit a home run on Friday, June the 10th of 1955 at Ebbets Field. It was a night game against the Cubs. You hit it in the fifth inning off of Sad Sam Jones. The score at the time was 1-0. Your home run made it 2-0. You won the game 7-0. You also hit an infield single and a sacrifice fly. You had 2 RBIs. You were 2 for 3. It was a big house. You had over 21,000 people there that night. It was a 4-hit shutout. Whose bat did you use to hit that home run?
That's interesting you'd ask, because the guy on one of the smallest guys on the team was Don Zimmer, and he used the heaviest bat. So I like to use his bat because I didn't have to swing it very hard, and it was like iron. It was so heavy, and so I hit a fastball off of Sam Jones, who threw real hard, and that ball jumped off the bat and went into left center field stands at about 370, and I was shocked. Well, I used to hit a lot of. I was a pretty good hitter in high school and the minors, but in the big leagues, you're facing such tough pitching. I was only about a 160 hitter in the big leagues. I got 90-some hits, but most of them were singles and doubles. But that was a shot off the bat that I'll never forget. And here's an interesting sidelight about baseball and how statistics never go away. Last year, Kershaw, the Dodgers, pitched a shutout and hit a home run in the same game. So the historian at the Dodgers, Mark Langell, says, I wonder when that ever happened again, or if it ever happened to a Dodger pitcher. So they go back to 1955 and said, oh, yeah, here, Erskine shut out the Cubs and hit a home run just in the same game. So it got remembered. My home run got a little more mileage after they went back and found out the last time it happened, after Kershaw did it last year, the last time it happened was at Ebbets Field when Erskine hit a home run and pitched a shutout. So I got a lot of mileage out of that home run.
Yes, you did. 5 years earlier, August the 31st in 1950 at Ebbets Field, a night game against the Boston Braves, you actually went 4 for 5. You pitched the Dodgers to a 19-3 victory. The Dodgers knocked out Warren Spahn. You were 4 for 4 at the time when you came up in the 7th inning against Johnny Antonelli, who later, of course, pitched for the Giants. But Johnny Antonelli was in the game at the time, and he actually hit you with a pitch. Do you think that Johnny hit you with the pitch on purpose because you were at the time were 4 for 4?
Well, I can make a nice story out of that. Say, yeah, they were so afraid of me. No. There was no way in the world that he was throwing at me. It was just a happenstance, unintentionally. But that's the day Hodges hit 4 home runs, and I got 4 singles. So I have a picture at home somewhere after the game. They took a picture of Gil and me holding up 4 fingers, and I was so thrilled to get more than 1 hit in 1 game. But my first hit was pretty lucky. It was early in the game, and they put the bunt on for me, and I laid a bunt down the first baseline, and it was right on the line, just inside fair territory. So the Braves let it roll, thinking it might go foul. It didn't, and so I beat it out for a base hit. So that was my first hit. And then the other 3 hits I got, they kind of hit off the handle, maybe kind of blooped here and blooped there. If you'd laid my 4 hits end to end, they wouldn't have gone as far as one of Hodges' home runs. But as I often say, in the newspaper, it looked like 4-line drives.
Sure did. All of our fans know that about your 14 strikeout game in the 1953 World Series. They know about your 2 no-hitters, the first in 52 against the Cubs, your second one in 1956 against the Giants. You also pitched a 1-hitter in Cincinnati. The Dodgers beat the Reds 10-0. The only hit you gave up was a Gus Bell bunt single that I believe, don't quote me on this, but you can help me out, I believe it was one that Campanella ran out from behind the plate and tried to make the play and couldn't make the play, and that was the only hit.
Yeah, we played second game of doubleheader, and I was doing very well, getting everybody out. And Gus Bell, who was a good power hitter, left-handed hitter, and he had good speed, good running speed. But I would class him as a player with pretty good power. So he's the last guy in the world that we expected to lay down a bunt. But he was trying to break up the no-hitter, trying to get something started. The Reds were struggling. They lost the first game. And so, surprisingly enough, he lays the ball down the third baseline. Now, I wasn't a bad fielder, and I'm off the mound quick. And Campy was a very agile catcher, and he was out there as well. But we glanced at each other, just a glance, to who's going to take it. And I think Campy ended up going to take it, but Gus Bell, a good runner, beat it out. But every time I'd see Gus Bell after that, he'd laugh and laugh. He'd say, "Hey, Carl, how'd you like that line drive I hit to break up your no-hitter?" I said, "Why, you dirty bird, you bunted. How cheap is that?" We had a good time kidding about it. But, well, I was pretty close to a no-hitter that night and that afternoon. And then I had a couple other games I took into the seventh inning with no hits. In fact, the last complete game I pitched in the big leagues was in 1958. We moved to L.A., and I was pitching in Philly, and Campy had been injured, was in the hospital in New York with a broken neck and spinal damage. And I went to see Roy the day before this final game I pitched, and I was so emotional talking to Roy because he was face down in this kind of a bed arrangement, but his neck was broken and he was face down, and he said, "I get to watch baseball with this arrangement they've done with a TV set and a mirror. I can watch the games even though I'm face down, and I'll be watching you play tomorrow night." Well, I went back to Philly, and that game started the day after that night. I couldn't get Campy off my mind. He was watching me. Now, I pitched to Roy for 10 years, probably 1,000, 1,200 innings I pitched to Roy. And I couldn't get him out of my mind. And I'm late in my career. My arm is tired. I didn't have a lot of really good stuff left. But that night, I don't know, that inspiration of Roy watching me pitch, I had a no-hitter into the two out in the seventh inning, and Chuck Asigian hit a ground ball single past third to break up the no-hitter. But I ended up winning the game 2-1, and it was my last complete game of my whole career. Don Zimmer knocked in the winning run for me, and I think that if you can stretch your mind a little, I think my ability that night was limited, but I was so inspired knowing that Campanella back in New York was going to be watching me pitch this game against the Phillies that I got to give some credit someplace other than my own ability to pitch a 2-1 win, a complete game against the Phillies. But that was my last complete game of my career.
That's a beautiful story. I know I have seen photographs of Campy in that position right after his accident, face down on that contraption. It's a pretty sobering picture. Well, I want to take the opportunity to tell you that I was always a gigantic fan of yours, and I know that you've heard this from 1,000 people, but I don't think there was anybody in the world that could have loved the Brooklyn Dodgers more than I did. And it certainly was a thrill to speak with you and to interview you and have you on my show. And I want to wish you and your family all the best that there is. And thank you so much for taking time out for little old me and this little old show. And I really will never forget it, and I will keep this tape for the rest of my life. And God bless you. Thank you very, very much, Carl Erskine.
Have you got 1 minute for me to tell you one final story?
Absolutely.
Well, I tell you what, years past, I'm back in Indiana, and I've always appreciated I got to play in New York. That's the biggest, brightest stage in the world for sports, for music, for finance. New York, there's no place like New York. And to have a career in New York, I tell you what, I've been forever grateful. But when 9/11 happened, and all the Brooklyn firehouses were the first responders, and then when the collapse of the towers killed almost 400 firemen, and most all of them were Brooklyn firemen, it was a devastating feeling for me to think about those firehouses in Brooklyn. And so there's a chaplain named Benny Santiago that lives in my hometown. He's a chaplain for our sheriff's department, but he's a Brooklyn kid. And he wanted to go back and counsel the firehouses in Brooklyn after 9/11, which he did. But he called me and he said, "Carl, didn't you write a book about Brooklyn Dodger?" And I said, "Yeah, it's called Tales from the Dodger Dugout." He said, "Do you have any of those books?" I said, "Well, I got a few." He said, "Could I take some with me to Brooklyn, to the firehouses, when I counsel these firemen who lost all their buddies, a lot of their commanding officers, and be just a little touch of remembrance of the days when the Dodgers were in Brooklyn?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." So I gave Benny a big supply of my books, Tales from the Dodger Dugout. And he went to the firehouses, he did his counseling. And, you know, I went back to Brooklyn for the Cyclones one time. And the firemen said to me, they got a hold of me and said, "Hey, we understand you're coming to Brooklyn. Don't get a car. Don't rent a car. Don't get a cab. Don't get a driver. We got you. When you come to Brooklyn, you call us. We take you wherever you want to go." So I called them. I said, "I'm coming in on a certain day." They took me around all over. They took me back to Bay Ridge. I went back to see where we used to live. I've got this wonderful connection with the firemen, and even some police officers have written me from Brooklyn. So I just continue to have this wonderful connection with Brooklyn, New York, and I'm forever grateful. But my little book that I never intended to get that kind of attention is in many of the firehouses in Brooklyn. So let me tell you something, Peter. I get up every morning, and I hope to goodness my first words are of thanksgiving and praise that the good Lord led me through such a big experience to play in New York, to be a part of that Boys of Summer. And to have you remember us, Peter, I want to thank you for that. And tell my friends in New York, I love all of you. Even the Giant fans, I can't help but love all of you. Throw the Yankees in, too. I love everybody in New York.
That's great, Carl. That's wonderful, wonderful. All I can say is thank you very much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me, and I hope to speak with you again someday. You take care of yourself,
good,
okay?
Peter, you take care, and thank you for calling me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zoned Radio, and you're listening to Dodgers Baseball, a tale of two cities, from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter Trunk, and my co-hosts are Linda Wilson and Bernie Rose. Linda Wilson, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And Bernie Rose?
Just fine, thanks a lot.
No more rainstorms down there, Bernie, down in Florida?
No, not like last week, that's for sure.
So you're all dried out now?
Yes, we're doing okay.
All right. I thought we'd start off tonight. We'll stay in Brooklyn for a little bit, and I'd like to talk, since it's Memorial Day weekend, or just the culmination of same, talk about the final Memorial Day baseball at Ebbets Field. In 1956 and in 1957, the Dodgers were on the road on Memorial Day. So the final Memorial Day baseball was played at Ebbets Field. It was a doubleheader on May the 30th, 1955, against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Dodgers swept the Pirates before almost a full house at Ebbets Field, 26,700 plus. Russ the Monk Meyer won the first game, 8-4, and Don Big Nuke Newcomb was the winning pitcher in the nightcap, 8-3. The thing that sticks out to me is that in the second game, Don Newcomb hit 2 home runs in that game. Campanella Furillo homered also, but Newcomb, who finished the season 20-5, not too shabby. Also finished the season. Get this, guys. Newcomb finished 1955 with 7 home runs, 23 runs batted in, and he hit 359.
Unbelievable.
Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
When I met him, I said to him, how come they didn't put you in left field? He just looked at me like I was crazy. But anyway, lifetime, Newcomb not only hit 271 lifetime, he had 108 RBIs.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. 108 RBIs. This is a pitcher. Just incredible.
I can't remember any other Dodger pitcher hitting 2 home runs. Is he the last one to do it?
No.
You know what? That's a good question.
I'm pretty sure Don Drysdale did it. Hit 2 home runs in a game.
Well, he was the best hitting pitcher since Newcomb for sure.
Yeah, he was an outstanding hitter.
Linda, you
Dodgers
have a good
had
point.
A pitcher. Yeah, Big D could stick. He could hit. The Dodgers had a pitcher for a short time. The Dodgers had a pitcher for a short time in Los Angeles named Rick Rhoden.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Rick Rhoden could hit like an outfielder. He
might have hit 2. That rings a bell with me. That's something to look up. He might have popped for 2. That sounds familiar, but it's hard to remember.
Off the top of my head, and I could be wrong on this, but I think there's a possibility Darren Dryford did it too.
Drysdale.
Dryford.
I know.
Dryford.
He actually had. I mean, he had a couple of. He actually had a couple of games where he got 2 at bats.
Talk about another waste of $55 million.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Which is a shame because he could have been a great pitcher, but he was hurt. He didn't tell anybody, and he ended up being out for 2 years.
Yeah.
And he had one little stretch where he showed what he could do, and he was really good. Other than that, he ruined his career.
Yeah, he could throw aspirin tablets, boy.
Yeah, he had it going on.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did. Sticking with Memorial Day baseball, I have a little story for you guys.
Okay.
In May 30th, 1962, the Dodgers came back to the Polo Grounds to meet the New York Mets. First time ever back in New York, and I was at the game. In fact, it was a doubleheader. Koufax and Padres for the Dodgers. Don't ask me who pitched for the Mets. I do not remember. But
little Alvin Jackson, born on Christmas Day.
Could have been.
One of 9 children.
Right on. Could have been.
How many times did Bob Murphy say that?
Oh boy. Yeah, I know. Rest in peace, Bob Murphy. Anyway, there were 55,704 people in the Polo Grounds that day. That's capacity, baby. First game, Koufax pitched the first game. The Dodgers are up 10-0 in the 4th inning. Okay? And up comes Gil Hodges for the Mets. It has been discussed widely since, but Koufax is said to have grooved one for Hodges, and he hit a home run.
No kidding.
Yeah, the Dodgers won. The final was 13-6. Koufax actually pitched a complete game, giving up 6 runs, all of them earned, and 13 hits God only knows how many pitches he threw. But the complete game, and he beat the Mets 13-6. Maury Wills had 2 home runs in that game. One righty and one lefty. Yep. Ron Fairley hit one out, and Willie Davis hit one out. We had good. I went to a buddy of mine. We had pretty good seats. I was 15 years old. We had pretty nice seats between. I would say they were between home plate and first base, back about 30 rows, But they were nice. They were very good seats. And the second game, Padres pitched for the Dodgers. He lasted 6 innings. The Dodgers won 6-5. Hodges hit 2 more home runs, by the way, in the second game. Fairley hit another homer, and Willie Davis hit another homer for the Dodgers. And also Frank Howard hit a homer for the Dodgers. And the Mets pulled off a triple play in the 4th inning, which I did not miss. I saw it. I watched it. I saw it. I wasn't at the stands or in the men's room or turned my back or anything. I actually saw it happen. The Mets pulled off a triple play in the 4th inning. It was cool. It was very cool. The place went bananas. They went bananas. Yeah, triple play. It was great. It was exciting. After the game, being 15, me and my friend, we went around to the clubhouse, which was situated in center field of the Polo Grounds outside, and waited for the Dodgers to come out. You cannot believe what I'm talking about Frank Howard now. When Frank Howard walked out, what a 6'7" guy looks like to a 15-year-old boy. It was just, it was like a locomotive, like a steam locomotive. It was actually frightening. He was huge. His head, his shoulders, his hands. Oh my. He was huge. Anyway, during batting practice, before we got there extremely early, we got there when they would open the gates, which was hours before the first pitch of the first game. But we got there and we saw the Dodgers batting practice. The Dodgers batting practice consisted of, at the very end, as they were folding down the cage, they would play what they called long ball. Each regular got 1 pitch and tried to hit it out. And they were jumping in and jumping out, jumping in and jumping out. When Frank Howard went in, the batting practice pitcher threw it wide, and Howard leaned out with one arm, his left arm, and raked it on a short hop to the left center field fence about 390 feet away. It was just unbelievable. He was an animal. Incredibly strong guy. Incredibly strong guy. We waited around to get autographs for so long after the second game that when we got on the train to go back to 34th Street, when we got on the train, the Bulldog edition of the Daily Mirror was already out, and people were reading the Daily Mirror. That was one of the rags newspapers in New York back then, and the headline was, "Mets get bums rush." I'll never forget that headline. Mets get bums rush. They lost to Koufax and Padres. Anyway, that's my story. I hope I didn't bore you. That's my
not at all.
That's my Memorial Day meanderings, and mostly about Brooklyn. But the '62 Dodgers still had a lot of guys on that team that played in Brooklyn, and I enjoyed it very much. Now I
never
will.
should have lost that playoff to the Giants.
Oh boy, 11 years after 1951. Yeah. Oh God, it was so bad.
Just like 51,
anyway,
right?
Yeah, it was just like it. It was just like it.
So,
just like it.
Before
They
we
were
get
up
on,
4-1 in the 9th inning, and they lost.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh.
Just like it.
Can I tell you?
On the front coast.
Stan Williams couldn't throw a strike. Stan Williams, if you remember Stan Williams, the big right-hander for the Dodgers out of the bullpen, he could not throw a strike. He walked in a run. Oh, it was just heartbreaking. It was horrible. Anyway, that was then. This is now, and they're going through some rough times as we speak. I'm going to open the floor to one of you. Perhaps Linda would like to tell what she wants to talk about tonight, and I'll close my big mouth and we'll all listen to Linda. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay. Well, first thing, before I move on from Memorial Day, I did want to make a comment about how over the years on Memorial Day games when the Dodgers were playing at home, Vin Scully would always give some, recaps of previous games on Memorial Day, just like you did with, a lot of historical tidbits. And he'd also talk a lot about the history and significance of Memorial Day and how it started and everything like that. But I was just thinking, he's not on this trip. So yesterday when I was watching the game, I thought, wow, we're never going to get that again. It's something that's been, I've become accustomed to on Memorial Day for all these years, and it's going to come to an end. It's just like it's tradition on Memorial Day. You hear Vin Scully talking about it and telling you all about the holiday and baseball on the holiday. And it just dawned on me, that's it, So I'm going to feel a lot differently next Memorial Day. It'd be kind of, sad to not have that history there anymore.
Of course.
Sure.
But anyway, okay, so moving on. Just to talk a little bit about the last weekend series between the Dodgers and the Mets at Citi Field. Kind of wanted to get your guys' comments on it, and there were a few controversies there. Obviously, there was the controversy in the Kershaw game about him being pulled, and the night before when Syndergaard was ejected. Just wanted to see what you guys thought and what your ideas or comments are on that series.
Well, Bernie Rose, go ahead.
Thank you. The first thing I would say is you come away with a series the Dodgers actually took 2 out of 3, and yet I felt more angst. I felt like losing the series rather than winning the series. There was so much going on. And that the game with Kershaw, what are you going to do? They probably should have gone to Jansen. I know Peter felt that way. We were doing a little messaging, the three of us at the time, I believe. So, and everybody expected that. Now, in Robert's defense, Liberatore had been pitching great.
Yes.
And his last few outings, and it was a lefty, although Granderson, if I'm not mistaken, usually can hit a lefty, but I might be wrong on that. But what is the general consensus on that ball? Should Puig have caught that ball? It was a tough shot, but I think
Linda, what do you
judged
think?
it.
Well, I can't. It's too hard to say. I mean, I don't want to say, yeah, he should have. Although we're accustomed to seeing him catch balls like that, but it really was tough.
When he did not make the catch in real time, live, I castigated him aloud in my living room, a sword oath. But watching the replay, I reconsidered it. That was a very, very tough play. And if he had made it, it would have been a superb catch.
Yeah.
It would have been, but my feeling was I think he slightly misjudged the ball, so that when he actually got to where the ball was, he couldn't make the play. He was turned around. If he would have picked it up right away, that looked like a ball that should have been caught because it landed, it didn't hit the fence, and he was really almost there. It was tough play, though. I don't want to get on him for that because I've been on him for everything else. So, but I guess I already have. and that's a shame because I would have loved to have seen Kershaw be 8-1, which is what he would have been. But you can't win every game.
Well, the important thing is that the Dodgers got the win, even if Kershaw didn't.
Absolutely. But if I could just continue, I didn't expect them to beat DeGrom although we were all extremely hopeful of the kid. And that's why I thought, boy, if this kid is the next Fernando and he comes out like that, how great would that be? But we'll put that aside. That was a tough game, and he was probably nervous. The point I would like to make is the 5 home runs. Okay, Utley, what a great story that was. We'll get into the whole, Syndergaard thing and Utley. But the 5 home runs, and then before the next game interview with Roberts, who was starting to swing the bat well, and I'm saying, what, one game? And then they get one hitted, and that ball should have been caught. They lost it in the sun. The 3 of them were standing right there. They should have been no-hitted in that game. You know that.
For our audience, I would like to name the kid. The kid is Julio Urias.
Right.
The 3 of us have been just bandying about names like the kid and this and that. Our audience perhaps didn't watch the game and don't know who the kid is. And the kid in this instance was Julio Urias, the 19-year-old Dodgers left-hander in his first start at Citi Field. Go ahead. I'll continue.
Well, so my question is, and I'd let you to, elaborate on that, is basically the hitting. I mean, Roberts, it was great, the 5 home runs, but I kind of figured that just might be an aberration. And, Roberts alluded to, we're swinging the bats well after that, and then they get one hit. And I'm curious to see what happens tonight with Jake Arrieta being on the role he's been on. So, and the batting averages, when you look at the starting lineup for the Dodgers, although, Gonzo's getting back up there a little bit, and Utley's almost at 300 again. But the batting averages are very low, and I heard yesterday on the broadcast, I'm sure you heard it, at home, 5 Dodger starters in the everyday lineup are hitting 211 or under in Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
And on the road, they're hitting almost 300, or was it over 300? But it was, I forget what the number was, 280 something. That's a huge difference, and I've never seen that with any Dodger team, frankly. But I'd love to hear some thoughts on it from the 2 of you.
Well, Justin Turner is one who's really, really struggled at home, and Adrian, until he started showing signs of coming out of that the last game or 2 of the last homestand, I think he's really starting to heat up a little bit because his numbers are, up overall, although they're still low at home. But I think we'll see. They're going to come home after this series this week. They'll be home on the weekend. So we'll see what he can do.
Getting back to the game that he pulled Kershaw out for Liberatore to come in and pitch to Granderson, if you could read a person's face and their body language, when the camera kept following Kershaw in the Dodger dugout, sans baseball cap, I read that he was more than frustrated, and he looked a little angry that he had been pulled out. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, it's the first time this year that he was taken out in the middle of an inning, and he probably wanted to pitch to him.
I remember last season he actually got in a toe-to-toe screaming match with Don Mattingly, which lasted about 10 seconds in the Dodger dugout after Mattingly took him out last year. Do you remember that game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably didn't see that. But,
so Kershaw, he's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. Kershaw's a great guy. He does a lot of stuff off the field, and people don't even know the money he gives away and the things that he and his wife do. They're like the Bill Gates couple of baseball, but he's got a temper. He's a very strong competitor. He's a horse. If you've ever stood next to him, he's not a small man. He's a big guy. He's a big, strong guy, strapping guy.
Right.
And I really got the feeling, a very, very strong feeling, that he wanted to pick Dave Roberts up by the throat when he got pulled. And it only made it worse when Granderson hit the ball over Puig's head, and the camera kept going back. And he's not stupid. He's been in the league for a long time. He knows the camera was going back to him. So he probably chilled out a little bit, but I'm telling you, he was fuming.
Yeah.
Well, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. But in maybe Mattingly's defense a little bit, after the playoffs the year before, you have to think twice sometimes. And every great pitcher has been taken out of ball games in the middle of innings. And I guess he has to figure it's got to happen to him sometime. So I don't know if you're supposed to show up the manager like that. You're certainly not.
We all know what happened. We all know what happened with Pedro Martinez when he wasn't pulled out of the playoff game a few years ago, and then he got his ears pinned back, and the manager got fired during the winter for that.
Right.
But
Game 6, or was it also Game 1 against St. Louis? I mean, both of those games, he stuck with Kershaw, and I don't know why St. Louis gives him so many problems. But the Dodgers should have taken them out. The first game, I don't know what happened. Weren't they up like 6-2? And in the seventh inning, he imploded. Okay, fine, it happens. But in Game 6, because was that a 7-game series? Maybe whatever it was. It would have forced the final game. They were up 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was 2-0. I'm sorry. What was it? 2-0 in that game. And he got trouble in the 7th inning again. And, Mattingly stuck with him again. So I guess, he got a little gun shy, or is that what they call it?
Well, Vin Scully said during that series, and that was a division series, so it would have only been a 5-game series. But
right.
Vin Scully said at that time, before the 7th inning even got there, he said, we're getting to the 7th inning, which has been the landmine for Clayton Kershaw. We'll see if he can get. We'll see if he can get.
Plus, he was going on 3 days rest.
Yeah.
And so that's why, but he went with him. So maybe that's why the following season, that exchange happened.
Yeah.
But so this was a great series, though. I'd like to go back to because you brought it up, Linda. Let's go back and talk about the whole Syndergaard-Utley thing.
Okay.
Somebody want to take
Linda.
the lead on that?
Linda, you want to talk about the pitch behind Utley?
Yeah, and I'll have to tell you that this is kind of ironic. I was not able to watch the game live because I was at a birthday party for a Mets fan, a friend of mine, which was kind of funny because she doesn't have the package where you can watch it. So we were just kind of tracking the game on our cell phones, and then I got some of the radio coverage, and I heard Charlie Steiner talking about the pitch behind the back. But then I went home and watched the replays and everything. But according to Charlie Steiner, he thought that was a little quick reaction on the part of the umpires. But I guess, from what I understand, both teams were warned before the game, and they were well aware of all the tensions because of the Chase Utley returning to New York and all that. And so this is what I heard, was that they were both warned before the game. But Charlie Steiner still seemed to think that it was jumping the gun too much to eject him right away.
The New York Met announcers. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for those of you who were watching it live, I wondered what you thought.
Well, the New York Mets announcers, who I admire very much, by the way, they're excellent. They thought it was a disgrace, especially Ron Darling, the ex-Mets pitcher who does color. He thought it was a disgrace, and I happen to agree with him. However, they brought up something extremely interesting that I saw nowhere else in the print media, but they brought it up, and they said that the home plate umpire was a vacation replacement from the minor leagues.
I see.
Oh, they said he was a rookie.
He wasn't even a regular umpire.
Wow.
Now, how do you put a replacement umpire behind the plate with Syndergaard pitching and Utley is going to lead off for the Dodgers? Don't you, as the four umpires are rubbing up the baseballs in their little room, in their little locker room before the game, don't they discuss things like that? Like, hey, wait a minute, this is Syndergaard. He throws 100 miles an hour. He threw at Utley last year. He might throw at him again. Let's put someone with 10 or 12 years experience behind the plate. And if we don't put an experienced umpire behind the plate, let's talk to this kid umpire and explain to him what he can expect and what to do if it happens. I personally thought he did the wrong thing. I mean, he didn't warn him. I know what you're going to say. They were warned before the game, but that's horse manure too, because you know what? Baseball players will take care of the problem.
Yes.
Baseball players on the field will take care of the problem. How do I know that? Because 100 former baseball players, either on TV talk shows or in the booth at games over the last 15, 20 years, have said that to the audience. Tom Seaver used to say it all the time. He used to tell the umpire, Tom Seaver says, he used to tell the umpire, shut up and stay out of this. It's none of your business. and they would go about doing what they would do. Yes. He actually said that to umpires. The great Tom Seaver. Stay out of this and shut up. It's none of your business. And you want to know something? To a degree, that's true. The ball players will take care of it. I don't know about today's ball players. Some of them, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
it's always been that way, and they probably would do the same thing.
Throwing Syndergaard out for that one pitch, that was terrible. Terrible move.
My first thought was, I'm thinking they had to be warned about it. He did the right thing, but within moments, I'm talking to my brother on the phone. He's up in Jacksonville now, and he's a big Mets fan, and he's like, no, how can you do that? And and I have to agree. It didn't hit him. Now, that being said, one of the announcers, Eric Karros, who we know very well, for Fox, said he was definitely throwing at him. And I don't know about that, because if he was definitely throwing at him, I think he would have hit him.
That's what Ron Darling said.
Yeah.
That's what Ron Darling said. He said if a major league pitcher was throwing at him to hit him, he would have hit him. That was a warning.
But that being said,
of machismo, or however you pronounce that. I'm sorry. That's all that was. That was sending a message.
But Linda, I know what Linda's going to say. Just give me a second. But that being said, he threw it behind him. What kind of a warning is that? They think he broke the guy's leg, which in fact, if you remember, that play was the slide was out of line. We know that. But he also, the fielder, had to have some responsibility because he did it all wrong. He turned his back to the play. You're never supposed to do that. He didn't know where Utley was, so when he turned around, he got hit. And, he has to bear some of the responsibility. So what kind of a warning pitch is that? A warning, if they think the guy broke his leg, he actually should have hit him. That's what I'm thinking.
True.
Linda, what do you think?
Well, I have to wonder, though, if he just thought the warning pitch would not get him ejected, and he probably was assuming that if he did hit him, it might be a definite ejection. That's
well, but when he says, the ball just got away from me, that's just
we all know that's
true.
crazy. That's crazy.
Well,
that's
crazy. I love it. I heard that one.
The Mets announcer asked Ron Darling, if you were in that situation, what would you have done? And I quote Ron Darling, I would have hit him in the fanny.
There you go.
That was his quote.
Well, and that's probably what should have been done. I'm sure Utley expected it. No? Mm-hmm. You know, he knows the game. Yeah. He knows how it's done. And but what is totally amazing is what he did afterwards. I mean, that's just
crazy.
You got to be kidding. And he's been their best hitter all year.
He looked like he looked like he was in his prime with the Phillies for the rest of that
Absolutely. He got the double in the ninth inning to tie it up on Friday, which cost DeGrom a win. Now that we talked about Kershaw losing out on a win, and then to do what he did on Saturday, I mean that's unbelievable. He's 37 years old.
Well, and it's like they say, you know, let your bat do the talking. He did just that.
He did.
You don't have to get in with any of the other trash, you know. He just got the job done.
He did. Well, he did get the job done.
That is true. So now here we are. So they take 2 out of 3. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Here we are. They take 2 out of 3, and Bernie Rose feels as if they lost 2 out of 3.
Well, it almost felt that way. You know, with everything that happened. Watching Puig in the outfield, watching Grandal try to hit the ball, and also the both of them in the field, all of a sudden, they're supposed to be good defensively, and lately Puig looks horrible in the field. He can't find the ball anywhere near the ball, and Grandal has been just as bad, if not worse. And then Crawford. I mean, Mike, I'm watching. I'm like, why is he playing Crawford tonight? The guy's been horrible. He's hitting, you know, below the Mendoza line, as they say, all season long. And so this is the lineup they're trotting out there. And we know I love Turner. I think he'll come around. That surgery, I bring that up every week. But in the meantime, he's still struggling. And you're putting out this lineup that's just not getting it done. Even Peterson he's been better than the last 2 months of last season, but he's just not doing what they want him to be doing, obviously. And that's why if you add it all up, and I'm looking at what's going on, and then the one hit, which really should have been a no-hitter, and I'm going, this is unbelievable. What is happening with these teams? Of course, that was against the Cubs yesterday, but still. So they did take the 2 out of 3. Now, if somehow, some way they could split these 4 with the Cubs, is where I was going, that would be big. Because they catch a break. Hopefully they go home for the Braves and, Colorado maybe? I forget who. 2 teams that they should be able to handle at home before they go to San Francisco. Because the way things were going, and you mentioned it, Peter, it seems like the Giants have never lost in the last month.
Man, oh, man.
And I'm thinking, by the time they get to San Francisco in 10 days, they're going to be 10 games out.
Oh, God.
But they hung in there. They took 2 out of 3. Now we have to see what they can do there.
Yeah.
What they need to do is what they've done for 2 out of the last 3 years in June, and that is like win 26 out of 32 or something like that. You know what I mean? They have to get ridiculously hot and sort of like, I'm not saying run away and hide, but they have to regain first place and then stay in it every single day. There is no wild card coming out of the NL West.
No way, no how, right?
No way, no how. So they have to win it. And 2 out of the last 3 years, maybe it's 2 out of the last 4 years. I don't have any stats in front of me. But I know that the Dodgers got blazing hot in June.
Yeah.
And, they won like 28 out of 32 or something like that. They just got ridiculously hot. They won every single night. And that's what they're going to have to do. And I don't see them doing it. To tell you the truth, I don't see them doing it, and I'm going to tell you why in a nutshell. And I'm not putting blame. I'm just telling you why I think they're not going to do it. They don't have an incredible Greinke I'm not saying this year's Greinke. I'm saying they don't have the incredible Greinke.
Right.
And Justin Turner isn't doing it. Puig is not Puig. I don't know. I want to love Grandal so much, but it seems he just frustrates me. He looks horrible. And
absolutely.
Their bullpen is always horrible. It's just, even Kenley looks a little weird lately to me. And I don't have too much confidence myself. I'm speaking solely for me in Dave Roberts. Although he's a nice guy and he stole a base for me for the Boston Red Sox, the most important stolen base in the history of the Boston Red Sox. Thank you, David Roberts. But he does not impress me as a tactician. He really doesn't. No,
yeah,
does not. He does not. And to think the Dodgers had a chance, a very good chance, to get Joe Madden.
Yes.
When Mattingly left, the next morning Joe Madden left. I mean, it was perfect. And I said, okay, here we go. They're going to make me announce it. Joe Madden's going to L.A.
We all thought that. Absolutely.
Oh, boy.
And I was saying, get Ben Zobrist to play second. But no, they don't do that either. And he's only having a great year.
Yeah.
All three guys that they could have gotten to play second base are having fantastic years. I keep bringing that up,
but Utley's doing well, so we don't have to worry about Utley, right?
Well,
Kendrick maybe he's playing over his head, but he's doing well. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
Kendrick's starting to come around a little bit, too, but you can't sit Utley at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Kendrick's getting at-bats because left field is producing nothing.
Nothing.
Although Thompson's been okay when he's out there, but Crawford's been horrible. Puig's been terrible. So these guys, they're all getting shuffled around. Does anybody have any idea about Andre? When is he coming back?
I was just thinking that myself. I'm going to check on that.
Yeah, because I've seen nothing. And so I caught into the tail end of that conversation before we went on the air, and I just saw a blurb go by. So they released Guerrero. I didn't know that, and that's what you were talking about.
They DFA'd him, yeah, they did, yeah.
When I cut in. So, that is a complete waste of money.
And another joke is Ryu. He hurt his shoulder again.
Yeah, I know. His rehab in AAA received a major setback, I guess. So,
right.
I don't know what's going on there.
They can't bank on him. They're not going to be able to bank on him. Yeah.
No.
This looks like a tough year, boy, I tell you. Looks like a tough year.
It's shaping up that way. It is. And unless Kazmir can stay good the way he's been, and then we'll see what happens after that. But maybe the kid comes through. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's
curious.
It's such a long season, and
Yes, it is.
You never know what kind of moves are going to be made between now and August.
That's true. That is true. You would think they'd have to get hot sooner or later.
We're only a third of the way through right now. So right now, if you were to ask us, I'm sure we all would agree, there's just too many question marks, too many problems. But, in another 2 months, at the 2/3 mark, we might have a whole different opinion.
It could surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the trade deadline is August 1st this year because it's leap year. Trade deadline usually is July 31st. This year it's August 1st.
Right.
So we have 24 extra hours to get that big guy. Anyway, folks, I hate to say this, but we have to wrap it up. We've been on for quite a while. We're going to have to say goodnight, and we're going to have to wait until next week to speak of the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Los Angeles Dodgers once again. And I want to thank both of you before we get off the air and helping me out here and carrying the show for me. Both Linda Wilson and Bernie Rose, I thank both of you. And until next time.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay,
all right.
good night.
Thanks. Good night.
All right, we'll talk. Bye-bye.
How did it take it in for all that time?